Okay, let us begin. We are holding in fact Mem Hey Pasuk Chof Hey. Vaya'alu miMitzrayim vayovoyu eretz Canaan el Ya'akov avihem. So Vaya'alu miMitzrayim, they went up from Mitzrayim. This is as per Yosef's instructions, who told them Maharu va'alu el avi, and in fact the pasuk says el Ya'akov avihem, also in line with those same instructions of El Yaakov Avi, they went back to Yaakov, his father, as they were told to do. Vayagidu lo leimar, and they told him also in accordance with the instructions that Yosef gave them, saying Va'amartem elav. So they gave him the message Oid Yosef Chai. This corresponds to Oid Avi Chai. So they told him that he's alive and that he rules over the whole land of Mitzrayim. Vayofag liboy ki lo ha'emin lahem. So this word is a rare word, and there's a lot of discussion in what it means. I'm going like the Ramban, a little combination of the Rabbanel. I'm not going into the background of the word, but that it means that his heart stopped. His heart stopped because he didn't believe them. What does that mean? That means just like we had mentioned about Binyamin, that the brothers said if we come back and tell them that Ein Hanar Rameis, because Nafshay Kshura Benafshay. So here we see that in a very physical manifestation of Yaakov's life being bound up with Yosef's, such that when the mention of Yosef was brought back and the pain of Yosef's loss was mentioned once again, since he didn't believe that he was still alive. So instead, the only thing that happened was all the suffering, all the anguish was brought back to bear on him. And he started thinking about Yosef again, and therefore his heart stopped. So this is an illustration of Nafshay Kshur Benafshay and In Hanar V'Meis, the fear about Binyamin, which of course applies equally to Yosef in principle, the connection between Yaakov and Yosef. So that's where we're at. His heart stopped because of the mention and the recollection of Yosef and his great anguish at Yosef's disappearance. So they would divert to him all the dvarim of Yosef that he was medaber to them. Notice there that deeper. And vayar so agolois. And therefore, parenthetically. So, by the way, Vatachim Yaakov Aviyah means he was revived. He revived. So his heart stopped. This is a medical description of a medical event. His heart stopped from anguish, something, and they had to bring him back. So he was like a stupor, dazed, unresponsive, and by telling him the words of Yosef and showing him the Agolas, that brought him back to consciousness. So he came back up. He was revived. Or back to responsiveness. Okay. And he said, Vayom Yisrael Rav Yosef B'nichoy Ilchaver. Okay. So, I just want to say one thing about, we were discussing about the contradiction, who sent the Agolas. Here it says in Pasuk Zayin, the Agolas says, Shesholach Yosef lo say, and in Pasuk Hey, the next paragraph, it says, Shesholach Paro lo say. So we spoke about this, that there's the Agolas come from Paroi, as in they represent Paroi, and they represent Paroi's might, with its association with Avodah Zarah, etc., etc., and then there's Yosef channeling them the right way, as we discussed. But the Medrash says something in a very practical way, and I think this practical thing that the Medrash is saying is really mirroring this deeper idea. It says that Agolas that Paroi sent had Avodah Zarah engraved on it. So Yehuda went and burnt them, and Yosef replaced them with Agolas. So Paroi sent Agolas and Yosef sent Agolas. But Paro's Agolas were associated with Avodah Zarah, Yosef's were not. So that's a way of expressing the idea that we were saying, the same idea that we were saying, which is that Agolas, which are the strength and the power and the might of Paroi, are associated with the doctrine of Paroi, which is Avodah Zarah. So we need Yosef to send Agolas. We need to say we need Yosef to kasher the might of Egypt and make it subsumed under the service of Hashem. Okay, so I want to first comment on Pasuk of Zayin. We said, as we noticed, Pasuk of Zayin. As we noticed, it says Dover 3 times and Vatachi. So this pasuk parallels the Mizmor Kufim Zayin. Keep going back to and that Mizmor corresponds to the story of Yosef and his brothers in many ways, and it ends with Yishlach Devoroi Yamse Yashiv Magid Devoroi Yaakov. So there's the Dover of Hashem and his Ruach, and in terms of the wind, meteorological conditions or manifestations, and then there's the Dover to Yaakov that's associated with this Dover. It's the Dover that makes the snows melt, and of course the Ruach, which is both a meteorological condition and also the Ruach of the Ruach of Nevuah. So there we have the Dover and the Ruach, and in this pasuk as well, we have the Devarim and the Ruach. And that tells us then that these Devarim and the Ruach have an association with Nevuah, Magid Devarov Liakov, which of course brings us to the Targum, Shras Ruach Nevuah, Yaakov, Kuchar, remember, I think the Rambam has one year, so. And we have Targum having another year, so. But the point is it's associated with Ruach from Hashem, Ruach HaKodesh. Okay? And the Dover, like Dabar, this Dibar brings us back to the beginning of Pashas Vayeshev, where Aviv Shomaris had Dover, there's some kind of prophecy, divinity of the future, and Yaakov is waiting for it. And of course, this is the theme we've been noticing since the beginning of Vayeshev, which is that this whole drama revolves around the word of Hashem and who has it, and whether the brothers lose it. Yosef approaches it in a novel kind of way through dreams, and Yaakov is the one who has it, loses it, and then regains it here when the Dover comes true. So the Tachi Ruach Yaakov is the return of Nevuah, like it says Magid Devarov Yaakov. Of course, Yaakov. Fine. Now let's start from the end over here. The last thing it says, Yaakov says, "I'm going to go and see him before I die." So what's his point about? I want to go and see him. Let me go and see him. Now, if you view this in context, it's very different than what Yosef was recommending, because Yosef's message was, "You need to all come, move to Mitzrayim, live here, and I'll support you because it's another long time for the hunger." And Yaakov doesn't say, "You know what? I accept his idea. We should all move to Mitzrayim to be supported by Yosef and live there." That's not what Yaakov says. Yaakov says, Yosef is alive. Okay, I want to go see him before I die. So now that before I die is a clue. Why does he shift from Yosef's suggestion? So before I die is a clue because he's basically saying, "I'm ready to die now." And in fact, when he meets Yosef, he tells him in Pasuk Lamed, "Now that I see that you are alive, I can die." So Yaakov is now ready to die. So here Yosef had an idea for a glorious future, Yaakov and his family, and Yaakov says, "Actually, I am ready to die, and I just need to see it." Now, we'll get to that. So that's that's the beginning of an understanding here that Yaakov is not embracing what Yosef said. Instead, Yaakov is preparing for his death because now they know Yosef is alive, he can die. It doesn't explain why Yaakov is not concerned about taking care of his family, because Yosef suggested you should move along with everything. So we'll get to that soon, okay? But I want you to notice also, there's a lot of life and death going on here, because we have this Vatechi Ruach Yaakov. Yaakov's spirit came back to health. Well, he uses the expression he almost died, his heart stopped. And then he said, "Okay, now I can die. Now that I came back alive, now I can die." So the pshat is like this, because like he says to Yosef, I can die because you're alive, which means to say that he considers his own life to be fulfilled through Yosef. Since you, Yosef, are alive, I can die because I don't need to be alive myself, knowing that you are alive to continue my legacy. So similarly over here, where he almost died, his heart stopped when he started thinking about Yosef again and thinking that it's missing because he didn't believe that. So all they did was bring back all the pain. So he died inside along with Yosef because Nafsha, we thought he was dead, because Nafsha Ikshur Nafsha. Like Yosef ate a nar. And that tells us that Yaakov and Yosef are like one life. And therefore, when he comes around and says, oh, Yosef is indeed alive, then he's ready to die. Because since we just established that he and Yosef are nafsha true nafsha of one life, therefore, when he thinks Yosef is dead, he's died. And when he thinks Yosef is alive, he's actually happy to die himself, as long as he can see him. Because as long as he has that connection to Yosef, he doesn't need to be alive. He's alive vicariously through Yosef. Okay. So that's one way to read also Rav. Rav. What's that Rav? So Rav means sufficient, it's much. So some read it, it's much to me that Yosef is still alive. Meaning they came and told him two things. And he's saying, Rav Yosef meaning here you came to me saying he's alive. And he has a lot of power, but for me, the fact that he's alive is all I need. Why? Because what's the purpose of the power? Support us, and we're going to get rich from it, or at least survive the hunger. I don't need that, because for me, I actually don't mind dying. In fact, I don't need to live anymore, as long as Yosef is still alive. And there's another point here, which is going back to Mizmor Kufman Zayin. So when Yaakov is saying Rav and saying I don't need to hear about the Moshe, he's echoing that idea that power is not what it's about, rather and this point about we don't need the Gures, rather Hashem wants Rev, and that's how one is going to survive hunger. That it says also in Israel and Gimel, which we're going back to a lot as well, which is about the Dvar Hashem that created the heavens. Dvar Hashem Shemayim Na'asu, and that's the theme of that Mizmor. Since everything is created with Dvar Hashem, therefore, if there's any problem in the world, you need to be Yarei Hashem in order to find the solution. That's basically the point over there. And there it says, Ein HaMelech Lo Yishalru. So kings and their Rav Chayil are not so interesting. I don't care that Yosef is a Moshe. Rather Rav or Yosef and Yichai. So I'm just telling two to the Rav. In a Moshe Rav Chayil, Gibel not a Rav Koyach. I don't need Rav Chayil, I don't need Rav Koyach, I don't need Rav Chayil. What do I need? Ein Hashem Eliyah Lo Chaste. So, in other words, Yaakov is saying, you think you're going to impress me with the Moshe? I don't need that. I will be saved from the Rav without his power. Of course, is what happened, because Yaakov comes down to Mitzrayim and puts an end to the Rav with his bracha. Hine Ein Hashem Eliyah Lo Chaste, L'Hatzil Rav Nafsho L'Chayos Rav. So here again, notice this pasuk too is talking about Moves and Chayim, Yaakov who Vayocha V'Libai, and then Vaytechi, and then he says I could die. He's shifting away from a certain kind of life. Again, I just for now just notice this the words. It's paralleling this pasuk as dealing with life and death. I'll just say that. But the Indian is that by Yaakov saying Rav Yosef Nichai Ilcho Verenu, and in the context of them coming with a message that look, there's a predicted hunger for another 5 years, but it's okay because Yosef has the power. So when Yaakov says, it's enough for me, you know what I'm interested in? The fact that Yosef is alive, and that I'm going to see him. And no more interest, meaning to say, Ein HaMelech lo yishbach rather, there's another way to bring an end to the hunger. Now, notice though, again, this is where you have to hold on to this subtle problem over here. On the one hand, Yaakov is saying, I don't care about his power because I'm willing to die. On the other hand, I'm okay with dying now. On the other hand, there's the rest of his family. Is that question? And on the third hand, now we're saying, why shouldn't one care about the power of the king? Because there's other ways to survive a rav, which is Ein Hashem Alireov, L'Hatzim Rav. So which one is it? Is it that Yaakov is ready to die, or is it that he doesn't care, he's not impressed with the might of the king because he fears Hashem, and that will be another way to bring an end to the hunger, provided his Ruach Nebuah came back, as we discussed, that for all the years they didn't have his Ruach Nebuah, he wasn't able to bring an end to the Rav through his year, but now that the Ruach came back, now he can bring an end to the Rav. Okay, so we have two problems. So in other words, I want to make it very clear what's happening. On the one hand, Yaakov says, all I need to do is see him. Here I'm sort of rejecting, and the implication is rejecting that offer of coming and living there and taking refuge and being supported by him. All I care about is to see him because I know I'm ready to die, because if he's alive, I don't need to live anymore. That's one meaning. Another meaning is that he's undermining the offer of power because he has a different kind of power, spiritual power, which will make him survive the rough. But the problem with the first meaning is, so those two, which one is it? And also the problem with the first meaning is, what about the rest of his family? And by the way, some people say the Sefer Yosher says, because notice like this, one second, let me just point out, notice the next pasuk, ultimately everyone went. So that tells us that it seems like everyone does have to go. In other words, if one were to read this pasuk El Chaverenu as a complete rejection of Yosef's offer, I don't need to go down to Mitzrayim and move there. I'm not interested. I just want to go see him and return to Kema'at. Then the next pasuk wouldn't say that Yisrael went and everything with him. In fact, the Sefer Yosher says, Yaakov said, I want to go down and see him and return to the land of Canaan. I don't want to abandon Canaan. I'm just going to go and see him. But that seems to be undermined by the fact that everyone went with him. If he's just going for a brief visit, because he wants to see him, he's planning on returning. Meaning you could read it, he was planning on going to visit and return, but then Hashem appeared to him and told him, you'll stay there and you're going to die there. I'll tell you, I'll decide when it's time for you to come back, whatever. You could read it as a change. But even before Hashem appeared to him, he went with all of his possessions, all his family. So that suggests that he wasn't only planning to visit. On the other hand, the extreme reading of El Chaverenu is that all I need is to go see him. But on the third hand, as we said, there's not just him, there's his whole family. And even if he only wants to see him because he's ready to die, how does he plan on caring for his family? So these are the problems. So I want to approach these problems from a little bit of a different place. I want to mention the Medrash, beautiful Medrash. The Medrash on the word Rav, Bereshit Rav is like this. Rav, Vayom Yisrael Rav, is that Yisrael said that the power of Yosef is great. Rav means great. So Yisrael said, wow, Yosef has great power. What's the great power of Yosef? That he retained his righteousness throughout all this time, unlike me, who I said, Nistor Adarchi Hashem. Nistor Adarchi Hashem is the pasuk in Yeshaya Perek Aleph, which is put in the mouth of Yisrael. Lo Matem Yaakov Sagid Yisrael Nistor Adarchi Hashem. That's actually in the Perek Mem. And this, the Midrashim say, we talked about this in E17, that Yaakov, when he was running away from Beersheba, he thinks that he's not in the sight of Hashem. He says he wakes up from his dream and says, "Hey, so he thinks Hashem is not aware of him, and he says, "Is distance between him and Hashem?" And here, Yosef surpasses him. Says Yaakov, he surpassed me in his sitkis, in his greatness, that he retained his tzidkas even though he was going to exile, and I thought that I was going to exile, that Hashem was abandoning me, and Yosef knew better. So, I want to tell you what that means. That means that Yosef knows how to deal with the state of Hashem being hidden better than Yaakov does. And what that idea of that is based on everything we've been discussing for the last years, which is that Yosef has a different approach to the hiddenness of God. In fact, his approach is that he embraces it and seeks it out. So because of that, he's able to deal with it. While Yaakov, whose approach was to know Hashem, when he was thrust into a situation of Hashem being hidden, he had a problem with that. He didn't see Hashem in the hiddenness. While Yosef actually creates the hiddenness in order to bring out that kind of revelation, right? As we discussed. Okay, so notice that point, and of course the fact that Yaakov looks to see Hashem, to behold Hashem, first to be revealed, is borne out by this very pasuk where it says "Vatechi Yaakov Avim." He's looking for vision. He's looking for chazon, and in fact he says "Ilcha ver'enu." He wants to see, and this going and seeing. We noticed we mentioned the pasuk in Mizmor Gimel, "Ein Hashem el Yireo," and in Kufim Zayin. Oh, that's where it's Hashem. Sorry. So "Ein Hashem el Yireo," and the whole idea of the ayin, we have Yosef telling the brothers, which we showed means now you have once again become seers, prophets, and Yeshaya Perek Lamed. So there's, and that's vision, and that you can have that's a different way to survive the hunger as we discussed. So Yaakov is talking about seeing, very appropriate because Yaakov cares about seeing. That's what he cares about. So in other words, Yosef jumps into Seser, and that's his way. And because he jumps into Seser, therefore Rav, therefore he has a power that I, Yaakov, don't have. But my power, Yaakov's power, is to see. And now let's put it all together. What he's saying is the following. He's saying, very interesting thing. Yaakov says, I can now die. How can I die? Because Yosef is alive. All right. So that means to say that if Yosef is alive, Yaakov is alive. That's what the connection between Yaakov and Yosef was by virtue of the brothers coming back and bringing back the memory of Yosef. The connection between Yaakov and Yosef was so established, so tightly, that if Yosef is dead, which is what Yaakov originally thought, his heart would stop, and he's only alive because Yosef is alive. So let's think about that. And Yaakov being alive because Yosef is alive means Yaakov becomes a Navi. But he's only a Navi if Yosef is alive. So, and Yosef is something different than he is. Yosef is the one who's Rav, who jumps into the hiddenness of Mitzrayim and does engage in Gevuras Hasus and the Sheker Hasus and the Melech's Rav Choyel. That's Yosef's way. And that's why he's Rav. Because he's busy with Rav Choyel and Rav Koyach, which is not godly. Therefore, he's able to withstand the hiddenness of God, while I, Yaakov, couldn't withstand it. Okay? But now you have to listen to this paradox. I, Yaakov, am alive if Yosef is alive. That means I, Yaakov, can be the Navi as long as Yosef can be the Moshe. But remember then, what's the paradox? The Navi doesn't need the Moshe, because so on the one hand, Yaakov does not need Yosef, on the other hand, he does. He needs Yosef to be Yosef, to do his thing running Mitzrayim and embrace Gevuras Hasus, which is what Yosef is all about, because Yosef is the one who dabbles in Seser and is Rav. That's who Yosef is. And if Yosef could survive, then Yaakov could also survive. And if Yaakov survives as Yaakov, who's a Navi, who's the Yireh Hashem, then he no longer needs Yosef to be alive because he's going to bring an end to the hunger. So my answer to all the problems is like this. Again, the question was, on the one hand, Yaakov is saying, all I need to do is be alive. On the other hand, all I need to do is see Yosef. On the other hand, what's about the rest of his family? Why doesn't he need to bring them down? Because he cares about them. And the truth is, he did bring them down, as the next pasuk says. And the other problem was, he seems to be, on the one hand, he seems to be saying, I just want to see Yosef. On the other hand, he seems to be saying, I don't need his power, I'm going to bring an end to the Rav. So which one is it? The answer is, I am going to listen to Yosef's instructions and let Yosef be Yosef, only because in order for me to be alive, I need to connect with Yosef as Yosef. So I am going to, which is Rav, I am going to go down to Yosef and let Yosef be Yosef, and I'm going to experience that. And that experience of my connection to Yosef, who is different than me and does what Yosef is, going to make that I am so alive that I don't even have to be living in a body anymore. I'm done. As long as I have Yosef. And Yaakov, the fact that Yaakov is Vatchi Ruach is going to make that I personally do not need Yosef. So all the things come together. So again, on the one hand, Yaakov is saying all I need to do is see Yosef. Yes. But why does seeing Yosef mean bringing everyone down and letting Yosef take care of everyone? Because that's Yosef. That's what Yosef is all about. That's why he's Rav. Yaakov is not just saying, I don't care about everything else. Yaakov is saying, me personally, I am not going to be under Yosef. I am only going to see Yosef. And the seeing of Yosef is going to make me perfect. But seeing Yosef means seeing Yosef be Yosef, which is to say, take care of the whole family. Okay, that's how I want to answer the problems. See how that answers it? We're good? Yes, Yaakov is saying, I'm going to, I'm going to be alive if Yosef is alive. That's one level. And second level, that's all I need because I don't need, because if Yosef is alive, I am alive, okay? That's all I need in terms of to deal with the hunger, because if I am alive as Yaakov, then the hunger is going to end because I am a Yirei Hashem. But nonetheless, that doesn't mean that I'm going to just come back alive and forget about Yosef's advice and just bring an end to the hunger by virtue of being Yaakov. Because the way I'm going to bring an end to the hunger by virtue of being Yaakov is if I approve of Yosef as Yosef, who's Rav. And therefore I'm going to deliver to him whole family and treat him like a Moshel, but really, I don't need that. I only need that. Again, does Yaakov need it or does he not need it? He doesn't need to live under Yaakov, Yosef's power, because he's going to bring an end to the hunger through his Yira. But the only way he achieves Yira is through his connection with Yosef, and Yosef is not Yaakov. So therefore he's going to, that's the simple answer. Maybe I made it a little bit overcomplicated. So Yaakov comes to life by being connected to Yosef, and Yosef is going to Yosef, which means to say he's going to do things with Wissus and Rav Choyel and Sheker and Sheker. Just wanted to say one last thing, that in Dir and Mizmor Lam and Gimel and Tehillim, we have the word Lev numerous times. The heart of Hashem. Machshel is Libel Devadag, and Hashem looks down and sees Yachad Libam, he creates everyone's heart, and then he saves those who fear him from hunger. Nafshenu chiksel Hashem, kiva yismach libenu, kiva shem kotche b'tach. So our hearts are gladdened through him. Yaakov's heart, which was originally stopped, came back to life. His nefesh and his leiv, the nefesh and the leiv and his ruach, came back to him through Kivashim Kotche B'Tochen, not through Yosef. So Yosef offered to have B'Tochen in the power of the might of Egypt, and Yaakov ultimately is B'Tech B'Shem Hashem, and therefore his lake was delighted. And he chas to Hashem Alim Kashi Chanulach parallels Rotz Hashem Esirev Machal Machastoi in this mark of Zayin. So there's the Chesed Hashem, which is rooted in Dvar Hashem, and there's the Chesed of Yosef. And here, Yaakov was opting for the Chesed of Hashem and to be B'Tech in the Shem Kotre of Hashem. Okay? So basically, just to summarize what happened over here, message to Yaakov, his heart stops, but then it comes back when he accepts the truth, and this is highlighting that Yaakov and Yosef's lives are bound, intertwined, and Yaakov is alive if Yosef is alive, and vice versa, and that's why he's able to die when he sees Yosef. If Yosef is alive, he is alive because he considers Yosef to be an extension of his own life, and because he considers Yosef to be an extension of his own life, he's alive if Yosef is alive, which introduces a certain paradox. Because on the one hand, Yaakov does not need Yosef, meaning to say, if Yaakov is alive as Yaakov, he's going to bring an end to the hunger through Nevuah and Chazoin. But he's only alive as a Navi if he sees Yosef, who's not a Navi, and he's greatly impressed by Yosef's Rav, which is the engaging with the hiddenness of Hashem and being able to withstand it in a way that Yaakov could not, because he's a Navi, and therefore if he's shocked by the hiddenness of Hashem, he feels something's wrong. Yosef has this power to not feel like there's something wrong, even beyond Yaakov, because he's not a Navi. So Yaakov says, I'm going to see him. Okay, we have to think about the seeing him, what that's significant. I'll have to speak another time. I'm going to see him, and that's going to make me, affirm me, and make me alive. And once it makes me alive, I personally don't need his power, because I want to bring an end to the hunger.